survive in this post-apocalyptic world, all homeowners in the community had no choice but to cultivate crops under 10 meters of thick snow. Yet the men were shamelessly living at home with their girlfriends. It turns out, just recently, even though I managed to resolve this negotiation crisis perfectly, I was well aware deep down that just having Wang Chang and Huang Tianfang as my useless teammates wasn't enough. After all, both Li Jian and Qin Yuling are smart individuals. They obviously knew the purpose of me agreeing to the negotiation terms. It was only due to the threat of my firepower that they conceded. They will definitely wait for the right moment to resist again. At this moment, Uncle Yu, who was standing beside me, chuckled and said, "You're asking them to plant corn in this cold weather. Johnny, are you messing with them?" I just smiled and said, "All I'm doing is depleting their energy. Most people nowadays are starving and can hardly get enough food. Even if they wanted to resist in the future, they wouldn't have the strength to do so." I then looked seriously at Uncle Yu and said, "No third person should know about our conversation today. We will proceed as planned. Not only do we need to be wary of outsiders, but we also have to guard against insiders betraying us in this building." Hearing this, Uncle Yu nodded and responded, "Don't worry, Johnny, I'll do whatever you say. After all, my family and I rely on you." Then I went back to my safe house. At the moment, Zhou Kir was doing yoga in the bedroom. Seeing me, her face lit up with joy and she asked, "Is everything okay? How did the negotiations go today?" Without a word, I picked her up and said, "It's nothing serious. Just used a few bullets and a grenade, and they conceded." I continued, "The outside might be a bit unsafe for a while, so just stay home. Give it some time, and these annoying folks will be gone for good." Hearing this, Zhou Kir took on a damsel-like demeanor and said, "You need to be careful too, okay?" The next morning, a large group of homeowners gathered in front of Unit 25. Desperate for a meal, they mustered up all their energy to start farming. Meanwhile, my two teammates supervised their work. Just then, I walked out from the entrance of the building. Seeing this, Wang Chang and Huang Tianfang looked excited. "Brother Zhang, are you heading out to find supplies? Why not take us with you? We're just idling around here anyway." I smiled in response. "My snowmobile can't carry that many people. It's better to use that space for more supplies. You two just wait here for me to return." I then looked at the working crowd and said, "You all better do a good job. I'll be checking your progress when I return. If it's not satisfactory, there will be no food." Hearing this, the group immediately worked harder, wielding their hoes with determination. But as I left, Wang Chang and Huang Tianfang whispered to each other, "We need to find an opportunity to get his vehicle." The first thing I did on my outing was not to find food, but to head to the Tianhai City Pet Hospital. Then I rummaged through the pet hospital's pharmacy. 2 minutes later, I found an entire box of rat poison. This poison, when diluted, is colorless and tasteless. It's usually used to euthanize pets that can't be saved. Now, it's perfect for giving a vitamin boost to those shameless people. If I wasn't worried they would tear the building apart, I wouldn't even provide food for 3, let alone 300. Everyone should rely on their abilities to survive in this apocalyptic world. Why should I play the saint? I'll take this opportunity to send them off to the hereafter, but I still need to put on a show. So I began looking for living supplies around the city. After a while, I returned to the community with bags of supplies. Seeing this, the neighbors were all astonished. "Johnny, where did you find so many supplies?" I just smiled and said, "The snow outside is getting higher and higher. It's indeed getting hard to find supplies. I was just lucky this time. It might not be the case next time." Then, I took out my phone and notified the owners of the other units, asking them to come and collect today's food. Surprisingly, these people have become more cautious. Each unit only sent one representative. It was evident that they were afraid I might kill them all. Next, I took out a large bag of food. "Now, we'll begin the distribution." The representative from the first unit came forward to collect today's supplies. With that, I threw a bag of food at the feet of the representative from Building 1. After distributing all the supplies, I smiled and said, "We're all homeowners from the same community. There's no need to be so distant. I hope from today onward, we can work together towards a brighter future." I said this, of course, to let their guard down. As expected, everyone became emotional. Zhang is right. As long as we work together, we can get through this. Then, I clapped my hands to interrupt their cheers. Now that the food has been distributed, everyone can go back, eat well, and prepare to farm diligently tomorrow. Hearing this, the neighbors left joyfully. However, I watched their retreating figures and chuckled coldly. In a little while, these troublemakers will be gone for good. I then returned to my safe house, instructed Zhou Kir to prepare dinner, and headed to the bathroom for a relaxing hot shower. After getting rid of these problematic individuals, I'll need to find a safer place to start anew. Each representative, after collecting their food, immediately returned to their respective buildings. Seeing his underling return with food, Wang Chang instantly became ecstatic. Ignoring the questions from his subordinate, he eagerly searched through the food. Soon, Wang Chang found a brand new, unopened pack of cigarettes. "Yo, Zhang truly keeps his word." The younger gang members behind him became restless. "Brother Chang, give us one too. We can't take it anymore. We're suffocating." Seeing the situation, Wang Chang reluctantly handed out a cigarette to each of his underlings with tears in his eyes. Watching them joyously smoke, Wang Chang felt helpless. If he didn't distribute the cigarettes, he feared his position as the leader would be at stake. He then picked up the food and said, "Call over all the brothers." homeowners. Let's distribute today's food. Soon, a group of underlings were merrily eating in the living room. Seeing this, Wang Chang finally relaxed, thinking that Zhang Yi hadn't poisoned the food. Living off others while doing nothing seemed like a pretty good life. All they had to do was let the deceived homeowners continue working. On the other hand, the homeowners, thinking there was food distribution, worked with full enthusiasm. They believed as long as they worked diligently every day, they'd get food. However, after a day's work, they received nothing. Arguments erupted in every building in the community. Didn't they say if we work, we'd get food? Why is there nothing after a whole day's work? The unit owners just laughed, replying, "You slack off all day and then expect food? Where in the world does that happen?" The constant quarreling throughout the community woke me from my sleep, but this scene was precisely what I wanted to witness. Once they almost settled their internal disputes, it'd be time for me to take action. After breakfast, I left early. First, I found Uncle Yu and warned him about the looming riots due to uneven food distribution and told him to be careful. Then, I rode my snowmobile to search for supplies. To intensify their internal conflicts, I brought back even less food than before. Smiling, I said, "Supplies are getting harder to find outside. Please make do with what we have today. I'll try to find more tomorrow." As I predicted, riots broke out in the entire community that night. Desperate for a meal, some homeowners turned against their longtime neighbors, resorting to violence. Some even pushed others off high-rise buildings to alleviate the pressure of food distribution. The neighbors who didn't get food had completely lost their minds. The community had become more chaotic than ever, with cries of fighting and killing echoing everywhere. Yet, I was at home, leisurely listening to classical music, wondering how many would die that night. The next morning, I walked out of the building with Uncle Yu and a few others. Though mentally prepared, the scene still took my breath away. Hundreds of bodies were strewn haphazardly around the community, and the surrounding buildings were stained with blackened, congealed blood. It was clear how intense the riot had been the night before. The expressions of agony on their faces suggested many were forced to jump from tall buildings, only to freeze to death in the cold night. Uncle Yu approached me and asked, "Do we still need to work today?" I smiled. "Why wouldn't we?" I pointed to a corpse nearby. "Did you really think of me as a saint? I'm not obliged to support you all. If you want food, you have to work for it." I gestured at the bodies on the ground. "Of course, if you end up like this, you won't have to work anymore." Hearing this, the group looked shocked. Compared to those who had died, they felt incredibly lucky. At least they didn't have to fight others for a bite to eat. Thinking this, they immediately turned around, indicating their readiness to work. Uncle Yu, looking at the bodies scattered around, sighed and asked, "Do we need to call out people from other buildings to work?" I just smiled. They probably don't have the time for that now. This riot is just the beginning. Unless the building owners can perfectly solve the food distribution issue, one side will eventually perish. All we have to do now is wait for their internal depletion. Later, I messaged in the building owners negotiation group, "If I don't see people from all the buildings working tomorrow, I can't guarantee food and cigarettes." Indeed, after I made that stern declaration, the next day, the community was bustling again. Early in the morning, a large number of people began to cultivate and farm. However, compared to the previous days, the number of workers had decreased by a third. Seeing this, Uncle Yu looked puzzled. They know they might not get any food. Why are they working so hard? I glanced at two men who were moving bodies and smiled. Aren't they addressing the food issue right now? Besides, people are always driven by their interests. Working gives them hope for survival, while rebelling is uncertain. I was about to leave to search for supplies when Chenlingyu stopped me. "Zhang Yi, wait. I want to discuss a potential collaboration." Chenlingyu knew that if things continued in this manner, the community would eventually collapse. She approached me with a proposal for continued cooperation. In her view, unless the food distribution issue was resolved, the casualties would only increase. She believed she could use scientific management methods to help me govern the community and even expand our territory. Establishing a new kingdom in this post-apocalyptic world wouldn't be a problem. However, I just laughed. This current situation is exactly what I wanted to see. And now, you expect me to play the generous king and provide for these 2,000 people for nothing? I grabbed Chenlingyu's shoulder. Before the apocalypse, you used this rhetoric to deceive many people into collaborating with you. By now, the grass on their graves must be really tall. Do you really think I'm dumb enough to be your next victim? I pushed Chenlingyu away. "I'm not interested in any of your plans. Find someone else to play your emperor." Seeing that I wasn't falling for her proposal, Chenlingyu pleaded, "Zhang Yi, please reconsider. I promise I'll be a good advisor." On the other hand, Li Jian was diligently leading his team to clear and cultivate the land. To my surprise, none of Li Jian's team had suffered any casualties so far. This guy surely had some skills. Seeing me, Li Jian exclaimed, "Zhang Yi, what brings you here?" I replied with a smile, "I'm curious about how you manage your building. The other units have started fighting among themselves over food distribution." Li Jian didn't hide much and shared that he had informed everyone about the negotiation results from the start. No matter what happened later, the food would be distributed equally. I strongly disagreed with his approach. "You think you're so clever, but if you continue this way, everyone will starve. With your capabilities, you could have chosen and protected the most useful people and abandoned the rest. Yet, even though you can't protect everyone, you still want to play the saint in this post-apocalyptic world. It's your own doing." I didn't didn't wait for his response and just left. Li Jian sighed heavily. He knew that the apocalypse tested human nature, but he couldn't overcome his own inner moral dilemma. At that moment, Wang Chang and Huang Tianfang approached me. Bro Zhang, aren't you going out to find food today? I smiled. Be patient. I'm about to head out and we'll make sure to get some good cigarettes and liquor for you guys. The two brothers were visibly excited. We always knew you were loyal, Zhang Yi. You're our savior in this world. Our lives are in your hands now. I chuckled. Come on, from now on, we're all brothers in this post-apocalyptic world. I'll do my best to provide for everyone. As usual, I distributed food to the representatives of each building. But at that moment, several building owners, who had been hiding and not showing themselves, approached me. Brother Zhang Yi, you can't play favorites. Next time, could you also bring us some cigarettes? We won't trouble you. Just one pack a day will do. Faced with these shameless owners, I reluctantly agreed, promising to provide for them starting tomorrow. With my affirmative answer, the group left contentedly. However, two neighbors who witnessed the scene expressed their discontent. These guys are going too far. You already generously provide them with food, Zhang, and now they want cigarettes too. If they're asking for cigarettes today, tomorrow they'll be demanding liquor. I just smiled. They're right. I shouldn't play favorites. The two stood there, stunned. They never expected someone as ruthless as me to be so amenable at that moment. Jealousy then consumed them. They toiled 18 hours a day to barely get by. So why did these building owners deserve cigarettes? Afterwards, I retreated home, laying on my couch, contemplating my next steps. After the chaos of recent days, over half of the community's population was dead or injured. Those left probably wouldn't turn on each other. If I continued in this manner, things would only get worse for me. It was time to settle things with these people. Early the next day, I went to a supermarket to scavenge supplies. If I was to send them off, I might as well prepare them a lavish last meal. I then laced all the food with a heavy dose of rat poison. A small bite would be enough to end them. However, after doing all this, I felt uneasy. Although I provided food for them every day, it was never enough for everyone. Apart from the building owners demanding cigarettes, no one else made any other requests. Could it be that they were also waiting for the right moment? But thinking about my safe house and weapons, I felt a bit more reassured, knowing that any devious schemes would be meaningless before overwhelming firepower. Soon, I brought back a heap of supplies to the community. Uncle Yu and his group had been waiting for a while. I then took out my phone and notified the representatives of each building to come and collect today's food. Soon after, a crowd arrived. Seeing this, I smirked internally, thinking, enjoy your last meal. As usual, I distributed food to each representative. This food had been laced with a heavy dose of rat poison. A single bite would be fatal. Enticed by cigarettes and liquor, surprisingly, more than half of the building owners came in person this time. However, just as I bent down to distribute the food, I heard a shout from Wang Chang from behind. Attack! Following his command, he drew a gun and aimed it at me. Damn it! I let my guard down, I thought, realizing he had a weapon. In the nick of time, Uncle Yu shielded me, taking 3 bullets. I quickly held onto Uncle Yu, who fell, and shouted at Wang Chang and the others, what the hell do you think you're doing? At that moment, a spy hidden in building 25 finally revealed himself, swinging a shovel at me. Reacting quickly, I pulled out a submachine gun from my pocket and said, if you're so eager to die, I'll oblige. I opened fire, hitting several in the front row. Seeing this, the crowd behind panicked. Run, he's got a submachine gun. But I didn't hesitate, continuing my barrage. With my sharpshooting skills, almost every owner was shot in the head by me. After emptying my submachine gun, I pulled out 2 handguns from my pocket, declaring, it's too late to run now. All of you are going to die. Upon hearing my words, both Wang Chang and Huang Tianfang were paralyzed with fear. Brother Zhang Yi, let us explain. Give us another chance, they pleaded. But in response, they were met with 2 bullets from my guns. You should have thought of this day, I murmured coldly. Without showing any emotion, I methodically approached the last of them, Chen Lingyu, who seemed utterly terrified. I had nothing to do with this. I have a family to take care of, she begged. But before she could finish her plea, I pulled the trigger. Even though I knew most people were unaware of the conspiracy, when an avalanche starts, no snowflake is innocent, and there was no way I was going to leave any threats behind, potentially causing trouble for me in the future. Surveying the aftermath, I felt nothing. After my rebirth, I had grown accustomed to the cycle of life and death. If not for the arsenal I had prepared in an alternate space, I would be the one lying on the ground. As I prepared to walk away, a faint voice reached my ears. It was Uncle Yu. I hurried to his side in disbelief. How is he still alive after taking 3 bullets? I wondered. I quickly pulled out an adrenaline shot from my alternate space and injected it into his chest. Noticing 2 neighbors sneakily watching, I shouted, what are you staring at? Help me! The 2, who had been frightened by the earlier events, hurriedly responded, coming. Following my instructions, they transported Uncle Yu to my home on a stretcher. As this was happening, Xiaolime, known for her cunning ways, rushed over with a look of distress. Seeing Uncle Yu unconscious, she burst into tears. Old Yu was perfectly fine. How could this happen? How are my daughter and I supposed to live now? Why did he play the hero and take a bullet for someone else? How can he leave us behind like this? She lamented. I listened, veins popping in anger. Stop your mourning, I snapped. Uncle Yu is not dead. I'll do everything in my power to save him. Shou Kir is the chief doctor at the city hospital. She'll know what to do. However, tears still streaming down her face, Xiaolime continued, if old you can't be saved, I don't want to live either. My poor daughter will suffer. Zhang, I hope you can take care of her. I looked at her with confusion. We haven't even started the rescue process, and you're already making arrangements for what comes after. Caught off guard by my question, Xiaolime hastily tried to explain, of course, I hope with all my heart that old you will be fine, but we should be prepared for the worst, right? Deep inside, though, she was thinking, Uncle Yu has been my long-term ticket to a comfortable life. Zhang, you can't let a sacrifice be in vain. Soon, Uncle Yu was brought to the entrance of my home. I suggested that Xiaolime and the others leave and let Zhou Kir perform surgery to remove the bullet from Uncle Yu. However, Xiaolime, feigning concern, said, Old Yu needs me by his side at this time. I can't leave him. Seeing the subtle twitches on Uncle Yu's face, I reluctantly agreed to let her stay. After all, despite all the circumstances, Uncle Yu had saved my life. No matter how heartless I might be, I couldn't just drive away the woman he cared for. Upon feeling the warmth inside the house, Xiaolime shed tears of emotion. This was the place she had dreamed of residing in ever since the snowstorm began. She relished the indoor warmth, enjoying not just the cozy fireplace but also the fresh food available. Anybody who walked in would wish to stay and never leave. Soon enough, Xiaolime made herself at home, heading to the kitchen to pour a cup of hot water. Zhou Kir and I exchanged speechless glances. She really thinks this is her home. Flushed with excitement, Xiaolime asked, do you have any milk powder? I want to prepare a warm bottle for the baby. Infuriated by her audacity, I snapped, don't you have your own milk? Are you seriously treating this place as your own? Using Uncle Yu as a shield, Xiaolime retorted, the baby needs to eat. Old Yu adores the baby. Coldly, I responded, cut the nonsense. Either help out or leave. Without another word, I headed to the generator room, storing everything inside into my spatial dimension. Then, I retrieved a white foldable bed from the same dimension, converting the area into a makeshift operating room. Xiaolime watched in astonishment. Damn, Zhang, are you performing magic or what? Ignoring her, I turned to Zhou Kir. Tell me whatever medicines and medical equipment you need. I'll provide whatever I can. We must save Uncle Yu no matter what. Zhou Kir, being the chief doctor at the city hospital, certainly knew her stuff. But first, she had to assess Uncle Yu's injuries. As she removed his shirt, her brow furrowed in concern. The bullet's location suggested potential internal organ damage. Given the current medical conditions, it seemed impossible to save Uncle Yu. Upon hearing the grim prognosis, Xiaolime put on a theatrical display of tears. If old Yu goes, how will my daughter and I survive? I pointed at her angrily. Stop with the theatrics. If your crying affects Uncle Yu's surgery, then you might as well go to hell and join him in mourning. Understand? At my words, Xiaolime wiped her tears. Then, I should probably leave. My presence here is only adding to the chaos. Yet, internally, she thought, it's much more comfortable outside. With hot water and food, why would I want to stay in here? However, I quickly blocked her path. Just a moment ago you said you wouldn't leave Uncle Yu's side, and now you think you're a hindrance? Listen closely. You'll stay right here and assist where needed. Even if you're just watching, it'll be an encouragement for Uncle Yu. If you dare step out of this room, you'll bear the consequences. With that, I turned away and swiftly made my way to the first floor hall. There, a group of neighbors were fervently explaining their non-involvement in the attempted murder. I had no patience for their excuses. Some had betrayed and ambushed, leading to Uncle Yu's critical injuries. I would make them pay for their treachery. But now, our immediate priority was to launch a counterattack. Those not participating would be considered traitors, facing consequences similar to the dead bodies outside. Hearing this, expressions of unease spread across the neighbors' faces. Not to mention the matter of traitors, but just the sheer number of residents in the complex was intimidating. Their small group would be nothing but a gnat in comparison. I pointed to the combat supplies prepared in advance. Your only responsibility is to guard the exits and monitor the surroundings. If someone tries to flee, finish them off. I'll personally handle those inside the building. They'll soon learn the consequences of crossing me. Soon, our group arrived at the base of building number 21. Meanwhile, Wolfgang on the upper floors had noticed something amiss. Recognizing that I was leading the charge, many of them were already trembling in fear. In this post-apocalyptic world where most only had melee weapons, I could effortlessly whip out a submachine gun. Who would dare oppose me? Still, there were those bold enough to defy. This building was their territory. After all, the hallways were dimly lit, making firearms less effective. I instructed my men to watch all the exits, ensuring that no one could escape by jumping out of the windows. Leaving them behind, I approached building number 21 alone. I first reached the ground floor hall. After ensuring no one was around, I retrieved a large pile of wood and clothing from my alternate space, placing them in various corners of the hall. Then, I poured gasoline over everything, connecting all the wood and clothes with gasoline trails. Once done, I lit my lighter, remarking, given how cold it is outside, let's warm things up a bit for these fellows. With that, I tossed the lighter onto the gasoline. Flames quickly spread throughout the ground floor, and I calmly exited the scene. Wolfgang's crew were naively waiting for me to ascend, but as the fire grew more intense, they soon realized something was off. Damn it, Zhang Yi and his gang set the place on fire. Open the windows quickly, or we'll suffocate from the smoke. But when they tried to open the windows, they found that the extreme cold had frozen them shut. Without tools, they couldn't break through. By then, I had already calmly walked out of the ground floor hall. Pointing to the smoke-engulfed building behind me, I declared, "The rest is up to you all. Be thorough, and don't let a single one escape." I emotionlessly stared at the towering inferno. Under the force of hunger and desperation, these people would eventually turn their weapons towards me. They only had their incompetent leader to blame, who had provoked someone he shouldn't have. As the flames intensified, many could not endure the scorching heat and chose to leap from the balconies, crashing heavily into the snow below. Even if they weren't burned alive, the fall likely crippled them. With one leading the charge, more and more residents started jumping. Some from lower floors survived their falls, but little did they realize, they had jumped from the frying pan into the fire. A woman from the crowd, who typically wouldn't even kill a chicken, wasted no time plunging her knife into the body of old Wang, a neighbor she used to spend her days with. Amidst the shocked reactions, Leon only smiled and said, "We all have to do what it takes to survive. I can't be left behind." As more people jumped from Building 21, Leon hastily moved forward, eager to ensure no one else would claim her credit. Watching the raging fire, not a shred of pity crossed my heart. Wang Chang's Building 21 was doomed. Every day, I provided them with food and cigarettes, and they plotted to kill me from the shadows. They shouldn't blame me for my merciless retaliation. In other buildings, many residents witnessed this horrifying spectacle. Their hearts raced with anxiety, fearing I might use the same method against them. Despite Wang Chang's prolonged plotting, his fate was riddled with bullet holes. However, many clung to the hope that they'd be spared since they hadn't participated in the assassination. They believed I had no reason to wipe them out. Having dealt with Building 21, I led my people towards Building 26, headed by Huang Tianfang. Seeing our approach, the residents of Building 26 frantically tried to distance themselves from the situation. "This is all Huang Tianfang's doing. We have nothing to do with it. Zhang Yi, please don't wrongfully accuse the innocent." Upon hearing their pleas, I laughed. "You claim this has nothing to do with you? I, for one, don't believe that. And you dare call yourselves good people? To have survived this long, each one of you must have taken a few lives." Without further ado, I repeated the process and gave Building 26 its own barbecue treatment. Soon, residents from other buildings grew restless, as I had set fire to 5 buildings that had a hand in the assassination attempt. They feared I might go on a rampage, burning every structure in sight. However, to their surprise, I pulled out a megaphone from my pocket. Addressing everyone, I announced, "Everyone, there's no need to worry. While I, Zhang Yi, may not be a saint, I won't kill without reason. Anyone who treats me with friendliness will be spared." A wave of relief washed over the faces of many residents. Finally, they saw hope of survival. Yet, some remained skeptical. This had nothing to do with us in the first place. I don't believe he could possibly burn down the entire complex. Ignoring their murmurs, I instructed everyone to rest, but these neighbors refused to leave. After enduring the cold for so many months, they weren't going to pass up a chance to warm themselves by the fire. I then approached the bodies of the 2 spies. It puzzled me. They had once been utterly loyal. What made them betray me? Rummaging through their belongings, I found their phones. Upon reviewing their chat history, realization dawned on me. So, that's how it is. After dealing with the buildings involved in the assassination, I immediately returned to my safe house. The steady rhythm on the heart rate monitor indicated that Uncle Yu was out of danger. I smiled at Zhou Keir. "It's no wonder you're the city's lead surgeon. Not everyone could have saved Uncle Yu like you did." As Zhou Keir and I chatted, Xiao Mei approached, holding her child. "Zhang Yi, could you get something for me and my baby to eat? We've been hungry all day." It dawned on me that the surgery had taken over 10 hours. "We should treat our great Dr. Zhou here," I said, pulling out a pack of instant noodles from my pocket. "Your Uncle Yu's woman, so I won't let you go hungry." I then turned to head out for a meal with Zhou Keir, but Xiao Mei pressed on. "Zhang Yi, do you have anything else to eat? I saw some eggs and chicken legs in the kitchen earlier." I was almost fuming. This cunning girl always wanted more. If it weren't for Uncle Yu, I would have thrown her out. Coldly, I said, "It's the end of the world. This pack of noodles is as valuable as gold. Eat it or leave it." After our meal, Zhou Keir and I returned to the bedroom. She sighed. "With Xiao Mei here, our house has another hassle." I tried to reassure her while massaging her tired muscles. "Don't worry, she won't stay long." I then inquired about Uncle Yu's condition. Zhou Keir responded with a mysterious tone. "By all logic, Uncle Yu should not have survived with so much blood loss." But just as his heart rate was fading, something strange happened. His wounds began to heal visibly. I was stunned. Could it be that Uncle Yu has awakened some special ability? My spatial ability came about because of the supernova explosion. But what I don't get is, out of thousands of people in our community, why was I the only one to awaken an ability? A sudden realization hit me. Uncle Yu's near-death state mirrored mine from before. Could that be the condition to awaken such abilities? If so, that's quite stringent. Lucky for Uncle Yu, he ran into me. Otherwise, he'd need an ability to resurrect on the spot. Otherwise, death is the only outcome. Thinking of this, I patted Zhou Keir's shoulder. "From now on, administer a dose of sedative to Uncle Yu daily." Zhou Keir was taken aback. "Did Uncle Yu awaken some sort of ability like you did?" I nodded. "It's unclear what Uncle Yu has awakened to, but if he turns into the Hulk and tears our home apart, it would be a major loss. After instructing Jokir to administer the sedatives to Uncle Yu, I got up and headed to the living room. Jokir, with a worried face, said, Xiaolime, that cunning mother only has eyes for herself and her child. Is it wise to let her take care of Uncle Yu? I reassured Jokir. Although Xiaolime is selfish, she knows the stakes. If anything happens to Uncle Yu, she's aware that she'll be kicked out. Meanwhile, Xiaolime was in the living room, scouting for something to eat. I sternly told her, stop looking. I've put everything away. You'll stay with Uncle Yu and be responsible for his daily needs. Seeing my serious demeanor, Xiaolime begrudgingly entered the room. What I had to do next was clean out any traitors in the building. I soon found myself fully armed in front of a door. Without hesitation, I shot through the lock and with a powerful kick, burst open the door. A disheveled woman wielding a kitchen knife charged at me. I quickly raised a riot shield to block her attack, then slapped the knife out of her hand. Fan Yuqing, it's been a long time. The fact you're still alive suggests you've turned your best friend into clay pot rice, haven't you? But Fan Yuqing, bloodshot eyes, cried out hysterically, it's impossible. Why can't so many people kill just one of you? I chuckled in response. Did you really think colluding with Wang Chang and a few others would be enough to get rid of me? You're so naive. With that, I raised the wooden stick in my hand. Had it not been for this woman's meddling in my past life, I could have lived at least 2 more years. Thinking this, I viciously struck Fan Yuqing's left leg with the stick. Next, I dragged her to the window, intending to throw her out. Seeing this, Fan Yuqing was finally gripped with fear. Zhang Yi, please spare me. I realized my mistakes and promised never to repeat them. Thinking of the pain of being cannibalized in my past life, I didn't hesitate and let go, allowing Fan Yuqing to plummet from the 25th floor. Accompanied by a loud thud, Fan Yuqing smashed into the snowy ground, creating a deep crater. Watching this scene, I felt no pity. This was my revenge for my past life. The next morning, I went to the sick room to check on Uncle Yu. Unexpectedly, after the transformation, Uncle Yu's healing speed was dozens of times faster than a regular person. In just a day, his gunshot wound had mostly healed. I instructed Jokir to always monitor his condition to prevent any unexpected occurrences. Without hesitation, Jokir immediately administered a sedative injection to Uncle Yu. Just then, Xiaolime approached, hoping I could go to her place to help retrieve her charger and diapers. I smiled, indicating that I had urgent matters to attend to, but I would assist her once I was done. After leaving the room, my expression immediately darkened. This scheming woman is still up to her old tricks. Our two families are only separated by a few floors, yet she still wants my help. Clearly, she fears that once she leaves, she won't be able to return. I need to find a way to deal with this cunning woman. Keeping her around will be a liability sooner or later. I then proceeded to the residential area to continue the purge. Only by eliminating these potential threats could we hope to live safely in this post-apocalyptic world. At that moment, the wealthy second-generation Su Hao approached me nervously, claiming he had crucial information to share. I responded with a smile. I've pretty much cleared the whole compound. What could be so important? Su Hao, looking secretive, whispered, Big Brother Zhang, have you heard about the son of Jiangnan's richest man spending billions to build a safe house for the apocalypse? My interest piqued instantly. Do you know the location of this safe house? Su Hao made a follow me gesture, implying it wasn't safe to talk openly. I then followed him to his residence. Once there, Su Hao rubbed his hands together and said, the refuge of the richest son, Wang Ximing, is located in Yunk Villa. Rumor has it he's hoarded enough supplies to last several lifetimes. I looked at him, puzzled. So what? What's your motive for telling me this? Su Hao patted his chest confidently. Big Brother Zhang, I'm doing this to show my loyalty. I wish to be your subordinate and follow you. With your strength, I'm sure you can take over that safe house. Laughing at his statement, I retorted, do you think I'm a fool? A safe house worth billions, and you believe I can just walk in and take it? At that moment, Su Hao continued, in fact, Wang Ximing is already aware of you, Big Brother Zhang. He asked me to lure you over, intending to ambush you and seize your snowmobile and supplies. Furious, I snapped, I knew something was off with you. Now that you've confessed, how do you wish to die? Su Hao quickly waved his hands. Big Brother Zhang, I wouldn't dare. I refused him then. Now, I genuinely want to join you and find a way to capture that safe house. Without hesitation, I pulled out a gun and aimed it at his forehead. How do I know this isn't a trap? Seeing my intent, Su Hao was paralyzed with fear. Wait, Big Brother Zhang, don't shoot. I swear every word I said is true. Just give me a chance. But before he could finish, I pulled the trigger. Su Hao, scared out of his wits, collapsed. When he finally came to, he noticed the bullet hole was merely a centimeter from his forehead. Desperately, he exclaimed, Big Brother Zhang, have mercy. I'm telling the truth. I calmly holstered my gun. I might consider trusting you, but you have to give me a reason. Taking a deep breath, Su Hao began, after witnessing your abilities, I believe that only by following you can I survive in this post-apocalyptic world. Even if I allied myself with Wang Ximing, I'd always be just a disposable pawn in his eyes. He continued, revealing that even before the apocalypse, he was Wang Ximing's lackey. In his attempts to curry favor with Wang Ximing, Su Hao even sacrificed his own woman for Wang's amusement. Despite all this, Wang Ximing never treated Su Hao as a human being. This had instilled deep resentment in Su Hao's heart. Observing Su Hao's rage, I suggested that a collaboration could be possible, but we'd need a solid plan. Suhao proposed that we deceive Wang Ximing, feigning alliance until he opens his doors. Once inside, we could eliminate him. Chuckling, I replied, "Are you an idiot? You want to take on someone without even knowing their security details?" Suhao countered that he was well versed with Wang's security details, but there was a catch. I had to promise him a position as my subordinate. Otherwise, he would remain silent. I smirked. If you won't talk, there seems to be no point in keeping you around. As I said this, I pressed the muzzle of my gun against his forehead. Seeing this, Suhao yelled, "I know you'll silence anyone who's no longer useful to you. Information about that safe house is my only lifeline now. Even if it kills me, I won't reveal it." Impressed, I remarked, "You're pretty clever. I'll accept your terms, but you must abide by my rules." Suhao nodded rapidly, swearing his loyalty to me and promising to always follow my orders. I then laid out my conditions. First, Suhao had to provide a detailed account of the safe house. Second, he had to deal with a particular nuisance for me, someone I couldn't approach directly. After securing Suhao's loyalty, I didn't immediately task him with my request. Instead, I mentioned, "As my subordinate, I have something valuable to bestow upon you." Then I returned to my safe house. Soon after, I arrived at Suhao's residence, holding a briefcase. Slowly, I began, "Since you've chosen to be my subordinate, there are certain truths I won't hide from you. I am, in fact, a professional assassin." Understanding dawned on Suhao. "No wonder, Brother Zhang, your shooting skills are impeccable." Suhao's confidence in the future grew. He believed that as long as he remained by my side, he would surely survive in this post-apocalyptic world. At this moment, I pulled out a syringe from the briefcase. "This is a slow-acting poison I specifically use for those who are stubborn or have ill intentions. Without an antidote, death is inevitable within a month." Upon hearing this, Suhao shouted in panic, "Brother Zhang, I swear I have no ill intentions." I simply smiled and reassured him, "Don't worry. As soon as we successfully seize Wang Ximing's safe house, I'll provide you with the antidote immediately." Hearing this, Suhao collapsed. If they didn't take the safe house, he'd surely die. But before he could contemplate further, I swiftly injected the substance into his neck. "From this moment, you're truly my subordinate. We're in the same boat now. You don't need to be scared. The poison won't act unless it's time." Drenched in sweat, Suhao realized he was now irreversibly bound to me. I told him to head back home, mentioning I'd contact him if anything was needed. Watching the trembling Suhao walk away, I smirked. It seemed I had successfully intimidated him. This made things easier, since he believed that tap water was a deadly poison. The chances of him betraying me had significantly reduced. Meanwhile, in a hospital room, Uncle Yu had just regained consciousness. Xiao Mei was whispering in his ear. However, I observed this entire scene through a surveillance feed. Even at death's door, they're still trying to be smart. I then opened the room door, feigning surprise. "Uncle Yu, you're finally awake. I'm so glad you're okay. Otherwise, the guilt would have haunted me for life." Upon hearing my words, Uncle Yu gratefully replied, "Zhang Yi, you saved my life once again. From now on, my life belongs to you." I chuckled. "Oh, come on. It was thanks to you this time." Xiao Mei, standing nearby, chimed in with feigned gratitude. "Zhang Yi, thank you so much. I don't know how to repay you." I responded with a smile. "What are you saying, Sister Xia? From now on, we're one family. I'll take care of the three of you." Hearing this, Xiao Mei's face lit up with joy. "Now we can officially stay here without any worries." She handed me the baby she was holding. "I'll go back to get some of our stuff. Don't lock me out." And with that, she quickly left, dreaming of the warm days ahead with the fireplace. As soon as she left, I took out my phone and sent a message to Suhao. "Prepare for action." While playing with the baby, I thought, "It's hard on you, little baby, but it's better this way. Otherwise, someone might turn you into a stew one day." On the other side, Xiao Mei, all smiles, returned to her door, but as she opened it, Suhao suddenly lunged at her. Before she could even utter a word in surprise, Suhao swiftly stabbed her. In desperation, Xiao Mei begged, "Please spare me. I'll give you whatever you want." But before she could finish her plea, Suhao continued his onslaught, ensuring she was motionless before he ceased. Afterwards, Suhao texted me, "Brother Zhang, it's done. When can I get some food?" Seeing the message, I couldn't help but smile. This problem is finally resolved. Otherwise, she might have tried to create discord between Uncle Yu and me. Turning to Uncle Yu, I said, "Your family can stay here in peace. Whenever you wish to move out, you're free to do so." Uncle Yu looked troubled upon hearing my words. "Brother Zhang Yi, this might not be appropriate. Plus, resources are limited. Saving my life is more than enough." I patted his shoulder. "We've already been through life and death together. Just stay here and recover." However, before I could finish, the baby in my arms began to cry uncontrollably. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't calm the little one. In desperation, I handed the baby to Zhokir. Having no experience with children, Zhokir appeared completely lost. Suddenly, a thought struck me. Could it be time for a diaper change? I quickly took out a pack of diapers from my storage space and tossed it to Zhokir. I then returned to Uncle Yu's room to inquire about his condition, asking if he felt anything amiss. Uncle Yu shook his head, indicating that apart from feeling weak, he didn't notice any other abnormalities. Suddenly, as if recalling something, Uncle Yu said, "Zhang Yi, you should check outside. My wife has been gone for quite a while. I'm worried something might have happened to her." I instructed Joe Care to look after Uncle Yu, and I went to my room to arm myself. Taking this opportunity, I planned to deal with some pending matters. I then sent a message to all the homeowners, summoning them to room 1301 on the 13th floor. The meeting was meant to distribute resources and decide on the future management of the community. We had successfully taken control of the entire area, and from now on, our word would be the law. Except for Su Hao, the neighbors who received the message rushed to room 1301. Hearing their discussions inside, I couldn't help but smirk. Want to be the community's manager? Talk to the king of hell about that. Without hesitation, I threw 2 grenades into the room. The unsuspecting neighbors, mid-conversation, were taken aback at the sight of the grenades. What the hell is this? They had no time to react as a massive explosion tore through the room. Outside, I had already positioned a blast shield to protect myself from the impact. I walked into the room, looking contemplative. Using grenades really makes things easier. A surviving neighbor, filled with rage, shouted, "Zhang Yi, we helped you so much. Why are you doing this?" I responded with a cold smirk. "You might be mistaken. Without me, you would have starved to death long ago." Without another word, I made sure he joined the others in the afterlife. Having exacted my revenge, I felt an immense sense of satisfaction. Except for Su Hao, all the neighbors who had wronged me in my previous life had been dealt with. From now on, no one in this community would ever pose a threat to me. All I needed now was to get to Wang Siming's billion-dollar safe house, and then I could live the rest of my days in peace and luxury. With a mournful expression, I approached Uncle Yu. "Sister Xia, she's gone." I slammed my fist against the wall. I thought there were only a few traitors in this building, but it turns out they were all traitors. But don't worry, Uncle Yu, I've taken care of them all in revenge for Sister Xia. Upon hearing this, tears streamed down Uncle Yu's face. Those ungrateful bastards deserved it. In his anger, he threw a fierce punch at his bed, creating a deep dent. This display of strength sent shivers down my spine. I hurriedly tried to calm Uncle Yu. "It's my fault for being too trusting. If only I had noticed their true intentions earlier." Uncle Yu clenched his fists, completely believing my words. After all, he too had witnessed the ingratitude of these neighbors over time. I let out a sigh. "It's all my fault for not managing things properly. But Uncle Yu, don't be too devastated. I promise to find you a young and beautiful wife." Upon hearing my words, Uncle Yu gave an awkward smile. "I'd prefer someone mature." Just then, Joe Care walked in with the crying baby. "This little one can't stop crying. What should we do?" I glanced at Joe Care. "If I'm not mistaken, the baby might be hungry for milk." Joe Care punched me lightly in the chest. "What are you talking about? How would I have milk to feed the baby? I took the baby from her. It seems we might need to find a stepmother for this little one." Joe Care agreed with my idea. After all, neither of us has experience with kids. It would be terrible if something went wrong. A moment later, I headed downstairs to the community with the baby, which alarmed the nearby residents. They whispered among themselves, "Is Zhang Yi coming to kill us?" I pointed my gun to the sky and shouted, "Bring out Li Jian." Shortly after, Li Jian emerged from building 18 and asked me what I wanted. I smiled at him. "You've got some guts. Aren't you afraid I'll shoot you on the spot?" To my surprise, despite the post-apocalyptic environment where food is scarce and clothes are inadequate, building 18, under Li Jian's management, had the highest number of survivors. I couldn't help but respect that. I handed the baby over to Li Jian. "There are mothers in your building, right? I'm entrusting you with the baby's care." As I said this, I placed some baby food, formula, and diapers in front of Li Jian. Without much ado, Li Jian assured me he would do his best to raise the baby. He then handed the baby over to a mother in building 18 to take care of. I approached Li Jian, inquiring about the exact number of survivors in their building and what they would do if I stopped providing them with food. But Li Jian was full of hope for the future. "No matter what, as long as people are alive, there's always hope." Upon hearing this, I pointed to the buildings I had cleared out. "The supplies there should last you for a while." However, Li Jian shook his head, indicating that they would not resort to that unless absolutely necessary. In his view, once they start down that path, their ultimate fate would be doom, a conclusion neither he nor anyone in his building wanted to see. Hearing this, I sighed deeply. With everything as it is now, nobody knows if death or tomorrow will come first. Yet, this man manages to hold on to his core values. I couldn't help but admire him greatly. Li Jian took a deep breath. "If only I were as capable as you. Maybe then I could truly lead everyone out of this apocalypse." "So, Zhang Yi, can you help us out a bit more? You were able to provide so much food for the entire community before. With so many people gone now, with your assistance, the remaining ones can surely survive." I interrupted him. "Everyone is suffering right now. I'm not Buddha or the Virgin Mary. I might help you now, but can I help you forever? And if I make sure everyone is well fed, who can guarantee I won't be bitten by the hand I fed? In this apocalypse, it's already a blessing to survive. I don't have any grand ambitions of being a savior." I then tossed a few packs of seeds in front of Li Jian. "Consider these a parting gift. If you want to thrive, you have to work for it. In this apocalyptic world, we all dwell in darkness. Yet, I see a glimmer of humanity in you. You can lead everyone to cultivate these seeds and farm, or you can eat them now. It's your choice." With that, I turned around and walked away. The residents who picked up the seeds looked puzzled. "Can we really grow crops in this frigid weather?" At that moment, a professor from the agricultural college urged everyone to quickly secure the seeds. These are our future hope. Seeing this, Li Jian also hastily collected the seeds. He asked the professor, Professor Gu, can we really grow crops in such cold conditions? With a determined look, Professor Gu responded, humanity has achieved countless impossibilities. Why can't we make it work this time? Hearing this, the other residents didn't hesitate any further, and with renewed hope, they gathered the seeds scattered on the ground. Back in my safe house, I stretched out. Finally, the community matters have come to a close. Next, I need to acquire Wang Siming's multi-billion safe house. I then asked Zhou Qir to prepare dinner. I've been busy all day, and I'm quite hungry. Without hesitation, Zhou Qir began cooking. As I watched her graceful figure, I approached her with a playful suggestion. How about we have a child? Who knows how long this apocalypse will last? Having kids is a way to ensure our legacy. 2 hours later, I received a message from Su Hao. He had negotiated with Wang Siming and asked when we would initiate our plan. I smiled in response. No need to rush. Come to my place, and we'll discuss it. Soon after, Su Hao arrived at my safe house, clearly enjoying the warmth of my shelter. I motioned for him to sit down so we could discuss our plans. Su Hao was about to kneel on the floor to report the details of his conversation with Wang Siming when I made a silencing gesture. No need to make it complicated. Just show me the chat history between you two. Upon hearing this, Su Hao broke into a cold sweat. Seeing that Su Hao was hesitant to bring out his phone, Zhang Yi's smile vanished instantly. So reluctant? Are you hiding something from me? Su Hao clutched his phone tightly, stuttering. I haven't hidden anything from you. Growing impatient, Zhang Yi replied, is it so hard to have a proper conversation? Do I really have to get physical with you? Hastily handing over his phone and pleading, Su Hao said, I did badmouth you to Wang Siming, but it was all to deceive him. I hope you won't take it personally, brother Zhang. Zhang Yi swiftly took the phone and went through their chat history. He discovered that Su Hao had been in contact with Wang Siming for 2 months. Su Hao initially wanted Wang Siming to eliminate Zhang Yi and then help him seize Zhang Yi's safe house and supplies. Surprisingly, Wang Siming had similar intentions. With a cold laugh, Zhang Yi displayed the chat log to Su Hao. How do you plan to explain this? You played both sides quite masterfully. Caught in the act, Su Hao quickly raised his right hand, swearing, brother Zhang, you've manipulated me too, right? We're 2 peas in a pod. Why would I betray you? Zhang Yi remained silent, rubbing his chin in thought. Wang Siming only knew about his snowmobile and base, unaware of his arsenal. Perhaps he could exploit this intelligence gap to set a trap. Throwing the phone onto the table, Zhang Yi looked at Su Hao and said, tell me everything about that shelter, especially the weaponry and defenses. I want every detail. Relieved, Su Hao began. Rumor has it that the shelter was built using materials from a spaceship. It's practically impenetrable unless attacked with missiles. Inside, there aren't any weapons, but there's gas used for hypnosis. The entrances are rigged with high-temperature flamethrowers. After hearing Su Hao's description, Zhang Yi formulated a plan in his mind. If he's after my vehicle and supplies, then if he doesn't get those things, even if he captures me, he probably won't kill me. At most, he'll torture me. When the time comes, I'll hide the snowmobile in advance, granting myself an extra layer of protection. Although my life may not be significant to him, I suspect he won't kill me before obtaining my snowmobile and supplies. Is there any other offensive mechanism inside that shelter apart from the 2 you mentioned? Grinning, Su Hao replied, that's all. We can pretend to be hypnotized by the gas, pass the traps, and then take him out. Once we're there, you can pretend to be captured, and I'll seize the chance to stab him, sending him straight to hell. The corners of Zhang Yi's mouth lifted slightly. Su Hao probably didn't know he had a gas mask, but that's okay. After all, it's always wise to be wary. Zhang Yi laid on the sofa, contemplating how to neutralize both the flames and gas. After all, without the upper hand, he couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. After much pondering, an idea flashed in his mind, his space ability. Time is frozen within this otherworldly space. If he could utilize it in battle, wouldn't it be a powerful advantage? He had always overlooked this ability. It seems he needs to explore it further. Su Hao, sitting on the ground, eagerly awaited Zhang Yi's response. Zhang Yi finally said, alright, go back for now. I'll contact you in a couple of days. Su Hao clung to Zhang Yi's leg. Brother Zhang, I've been poisoned. I'm afraid I can't wait that long. What are you scared of? Zhang Yi responded, the poison takes 7 days to take effect. I'll contact you in 2 or 3 days at most. Go home and wait patiently. No sooner had he spoken than Zhang Yi ushered him out the door. Brother Zhang, you must remember, otherwise, I'll be gone in 7 days. After seeing off Su Hao, Zhang Yi looked at his special ability in his hand. Apart from storing supplies and precise shooting, he wondered what other surprising capabilities it might have. However, his primary concern was how to utilize this power to neutralize the flame and gas. Once that was sorted, he could easily control Wang Siming. Zhang Yi then left the living room and entered an empty house, starting a fire to test his ability. Stretching out his right hand towards the flame, he activated his storage ability. The flames on the ground slowly converged towards him. Seeing that it worked, he extended both palms, aiming to accelerate the absorption process. In no time, the flames were entirely absorbed into the alternate space. Zhang Yi looked at his hands, delighted. I can't believe it actually worked. He stretched his palms forward, intending to try and release the stored fire. fire. The next moment, with a whooshing sound, the flames Zhang Yi had absorbed were instantly expelled forward. His eyes widened in surprise, and he burst into joyful laughter. So, apart from storage, this alternate space can be used like this. It's like a divine defensive technique. Now, Zhang Yi was as elated as a child who had discovered a new toy. Once he mastered this ability, any future attacks would be rendered useless against him. This power was perfect for someone like him, who prioritizes survival above all else. However, a thought crossed his mind. What would happen if he absorbed a living person into the space? Although he had previously tried it with a live fish, that was merely for food storage purposes. Now, when considering its combat potential, he would need to experiment with a live person. Zhang Yi wanted to test the combat capabilities of his alternate space using a living human subject. People in the surrounding buildings were terrified as they reluctantly offered up a sacrifice, who was clueless about whether he would live or die. Zhang Yi tossed him a stick and ordered him to attack him with it. The man was bewildered. Even if he had the courage, he wouldn't dare to attack Zhang Yi. Seeing the man's disbelief, Zhang Yi said, "If you manage to hit me with the stick even once, I'll reward you with a piece of bread." Upon hearing the word bread, the man's eyes lit up. "You better keep your word," he said, grabbing the stick and taking a swing at Zhang Yi without hesitation. In a flash, Zhang Yi activated his alternate space. Before the man could realize what had happened, both he and the stick were sucked into the alternate dimension. In an instant, he was frozen in place, as if turned into an ice sculpture, maintaining his attack posture. Curiously, Zhang Yi checked his pulse. Holy crap, his breathing and heartbeat have completely stopped. Did he die? With a wave of his hand, Zhang Yi ejected the man from the alternate space. The man came out panting heavily, his face full of dread as if he had just cheated death. Curious, Zhang Yi asked him, "How did it feel?" The man, sweating profusely, said, "I felt like I entered a blank world. It seemed like I was in there for a century. It was terrifying." Zhang Yi immediately understood. The passage of time in this alternate space is much slower than in the outside world. The longer one stays in it, the greater the chance of a mental breakdown. Therefore, living beings can't stay in the alternate space for too long. Otherwise, they'll either die or be severely impaired. Since he couldn't actively absorb living beings into the space, Zhang Yi wondered what would happen if he tried to disassemble some tissues instead. Zhang Yi immediately grabbed the hand of the sacrifice neighbor. With a swift motion, he sliced off two of the man's fingers, eliciting screams like that of a pig being slaughtered. Zhang Yi didn't care about the man's well-being. He was more intrigued by the discovery that while living beings couldn't stay in the alternate space for long, severed fingers could. What could be the principle behind this? He tossed some gauze to the man. "Hurry up and bandage yourself. Once you're done, we'll continue the experiment. This time, you'll throw something at me." After several more experiments using the man as a test subject, Zhang Yi had a better grasp of the functionalities of his alternate space. Until now, he had merely used it as a storage facility, which was a waste. His power could open a channel between this world and the alternate space to deflect incoming attacks and then redirect them back at his enemies. The man was now voraciously enjoying the food Zhang Yi had rewarded him with. As he gorged himself, he excitedly thanked Zhang Yi. This was the first full meal he had since the apocalypse. Zhang Yi smiled at him and said, "Eat slowly, brother." The man's spirits lifted at this. "Brother Zhang, if you need anything, just say the word, as long as you feed me." Before he could finish his sentence, Zhang Yi made a quick move. The man collapsed on the ground with a thud, blood pooling around him. Zhang Yi smiled and said, "I don't need anything else from you. You should be on your way now." Zhang Yi said. The man on the ground closed his eyes with a smile. He was finally free, no longer having to endure hunger and suffering in this post-apocalyptic world. Without looking back, Zhang Yi walked away. Time was running out for his appointment with Su Hao, and in the next few days, he needed to find some people for combat simulations. 3 days later, Su Hao was kneeling in front of Zhang Yi, begging him to join the attack on Wang Ximing's sanctuary. Ever since Zhang Yi had forcibly injected him with poison, he felt his body deteriorating day by day. If they didn't act soon, he feared he would die before they could seize Wang Ximing's stronghold. Zhang Yi looked at Su Hao coldly, finding the situation amusing. He hadn't expected that a lie he casually made up would have such a devastating effect on Su Hao. The power of psychological suggestion had certainly tormented him. Shrugging, Zhang Yi said, "I can inject you with an antidote to temporarily relieve your symptoms. If there's no cure in 5 days, you will die regardless." "I can't wait another minute," Su Hao said urgently, rolling up his sleeves. "If I don't get the shot, I feel like I'll die tomorrow." As Zhang Yi administered the injection, he also continued his psychological manipulation. "We can only succeed. Failure will not bode well for either of us." Filled with newfound confidence, Su Hao said, "Brother Zhang, rest assured, I'm willing to go through fire and water for you." Su Hao took out his phone. "I'll call Wang Ximing right now to arrange a meeting time. Everything will go according to your plan, Brother Zhang." Zhang Yi smirked slightly, thinking to himself, "You better not pull any tricks." After seeing off Su Hao, Zhang Yi started packing his bags. Shou Kir, standing nearby, watched in a daze. The issues in their community had already been mostly resolved, and she couldn't understand why they needed to go out again, especially with so much luggage. It seemed like they were going on a long trip. Zhang Yi Yi had left enough food for her and Uncle Yu to last half a month, but didn't share details of his plan. Zhou Kir didn't dare to ask more questions. Just as Zhang Yi was about to leave, Zhou Kir grew anxious. Was he planning to abandon her? She hugged him tightly, refusing to let go. Chuckling, Zhang Yi pinched her chin. Looks like the silly girl is overthinking things. If it weren't for more pressing matters, he would have stayed and spent more time with Zhou Kir. Suppressing his emotions, he kissed her and told her to behave while he was away. Their lives would undergo significant changes once he accomplished his current mission. With that, he walked out the door. Su Hao had been waiting for some time. Zhang Yi hopped onto his snowmobile and pulled out a rope. Su Hao was puzzled. Brother Zhang, you still don't trust me? My loyalty to you is as clear as daylight. Zhang Yi smiled. Don't misunderstand. I'm tying you up for Wang Siming to see. If he sees us getting along too well, he'd never believe that you've tricked me into this. Su Hao could only helplessly stretch out his hands as Zhang Yi tied him up. They rode away on the snowmobile, the northern wind painfully whipping Su Hao's face. He wanted to ask Zhang Yi for a helmet, but Zhang Yi chuckled. No helmet for you. Just endure it for a bit. Besides, the more miserable you look, the more believable it will be. Sniffling heavily, Su Hao followed Zhang Yi to Yankai Mountain Villa. Zhang Yi looked at the luxurious villas inside, facing the river and backed by the mountains. These buildings are a cut above other high-end villas. The terrain makes this place a natural snow haven. The snow accumulation here is much less than other places. When the apocalypse came, I thought the wealth gap would shrink. How naive I was. Money really is great. Su Hao hurriedly chimed in from behind. Brother Zhang, money is like waste paper now. Their current lives can't compare to yours. Zhang Yi smiled. Nice flattery. Come on, lead the way. The two then headed towards the villa complex. Su Hao was a bit puzzled as he followed, wondering why they didn't ride the snowmobile all the way in. Zhang Yi ignored his question and simply said, "We're walking, that's it. Stop talking."